My name is Amelia Nelson. I'm 32 years old, and they laughed when I lost my job. Now I've changed my life, and they're shocked. I still remember that awful Tuesday morning when my boss, Mr. Richard Carter, called me into his office with that cold look in his eyes and told me I was being let go. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach, and as I walked out of that building with my cardboard box, I could feel the stares and hear the whispers from my coworkers. I felt like my entire world was crumbling right beneath my feet, and honestly, I didn't know if I'd ever recover from that moment. But what hurt even more than losing my job was what came next. The reactions from the people I thought would support me. If you've ever felt completely abandoned when you needed support the most, hit that like button and subscribe because this story is going to show you how I turned my darkest moment into my greatest comeback. Have you ever been laughed at by your own family when you were already down? Let me know in the comments because I want to hear your stories too. When I told my sister Rebecca about losing my job, I expected a hug or maybe some encouraging words. But instead, she laughed and said, "I always knew you weren't cut out for that corporate world." My mother chimed in during our family dinner that same week, saying things like, "Maybe you should have worked harder," and "Your cousin Sarah never lost her job." Even my so-called best friend Marcus made jokes about how I'd have to move back in with my parents and give up my apartment. The shame and humiliation burned through me like fire, and I felt completely alone in a room full of people who were supposed to love me. You won't believe what happened next, but this mockery became the fuel for something they never saw coming. Before I lost my job at Henderson Marketing Group, I thought I had everything figured out in my life. I was a marketing coordinator making decent money, living in my own apartment in the city, and I genuinely believed I was building something solid for my future. My days were filled with client meetings, creative campaigns, and coffee breaks with colleagues who I thought were my friends. I had this comfortable routine where I'd wake up at 6 in the morning, hit the gym, grab my usual latte from the cafe on 5th Street, and walk into the office feeling like I belonged somewhere. But looking back now, I realize I had built my entire identity around that job, and when it disappeared, I didn't know who I was anymore. This video is going to take you through my complete transformation from rock bottom to the top, so make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, because by the end of this story, you'll see how betrayal can actually become your biggest blessing. Have you ever had your identity completely shaken? Drop a comment and let's connect over our shared experiences. The moment Mr. Carter told me the company was restructuring and my position was being eliminated, something inside me just broke. I wasn't just losing a paycheck. I was losing my sense of purpose, my daily structure, and the version of myself I had spent years building. Walking out of that office building for the last time, carrying that stupid cardboard box with my desk photos and coffee mug, I felt like everyone on the street could see my failure written across my forehead. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the walls and wondering how I'd pay next month's rent, how I'd explain this to my family, and most terrifyingly, who I even was without that job title. But I had no idea that this devastating loss would force me to discover a strength I never knew existed inside me. That Tuesday morning started like any other normal day at Henderson Marketing Group, but it ended with my entire world falling apart. I walked into the office at 8:30, grabbed my usual coffee from the break room, and was checking my emails when Mr. Carter's assistant, Jennifer, appeared at my desk and said, "Richard needs to see you in his office right now." My heart immediately started racing because in all my 4 years working there, I'd never been called into his office without a scheduled meeting. When I walked in, he didn't even ask me to sit down. He just stood there with his arms crossed and told me the company was restructuring and my position was being eliminated effective immediately. I felt my face go hot. My hands started shaking, and all I could think was, this can't be happening to me. If this story is hitting close to home and you've experienced that gut-wrenching moment of job loss, please hit that subscribe button and like this video because I'm sharing every raw detail to help others who are going through this pain. Have you ever felt like your whole identity disappeared in one conversation? Share your experience in the comments below. The worst part wasn't just losing my job. It was the way it happened with zero compassion or humanity. Mr. Carter handed me a manila envelope with my severance papers, called security to escort me out, and within 20 minutes I was standing on the sidewalk holding a cardboard box with my personal belongings, like I was some kind of criminal. I could see my former coworkers, people like David and Sarah who I'd had lunch with just yesterday, peeking through the windows and whispering to each other. The humiliation was crushing, and I remember thinking, 4 years of dedication, late nights, successful campaigns, and this is how it ends. Like I never mattered at all. As I walked to my car, tears streaming down my face, I felt completely disposable and worthless. But what came next at home was somehow even worse than losing the job itself. I thought my family would be my safe place, the people who would lift me up when I was at my lowest point. but I was so wrong it still hurts to think about. When I called my sister Rebecca that same evening, her first response after I told her I'd been fired was literally laughing. Not a sympathetic chuckle, but a full-on laugh. And then she said, "Honestly, Amelia, I'm not surprised because you were always complaining about that job anyway." My mom's reaction at our family dinner 3 days later was even more devastating when she said in front of everyone, "Well, maybe if you'd worked harder and stopped spending so much time on social media, they would have kept you." My younger brother Tommy just shook his head and made a joke about me becoming a professional couch surfer, and the whole table laughed like my pain was some kind of entertainment. Subscribe and like this video if you've ever felt betrayed by the very people who should have had your back, because this part of my story shows how loneliness can push you to find strength you didn't know existed. Has your family ever kicked you when you were already down? Let me know in the comments because I want you to know you're not alone. My best friend Marcus, someone I'd known since college and trusted completely, made everything worse when I met him for coffee to talk about what happened. Instead of offering support, he started giving me this patronizing advice like, "Maybe corporate life just isn't for you," and "Some people aren't built for high-pressure environments." Then he had the audacity to tell me about his recent promotion and how his company was thriving, like he was rubbing salt in my open wound. Even my Aunt Linda, who I'd always been close with, posted on Facebook asking if anyone was hiring for entry-level positions and tagged me, basically announcing my failure to our entire extended family. The shame was suffocating, and I started avoiding phone calls, social events, and even grocery shopping during peak hours because I couldn't face the possibility of running into someone I knew. I felt completely alone, like I was drowning, and everyone was just standing on the shore watching me struggle without throwing me a lifeline. For the first 2 weeks after losing my job, I barely left my apartment except to buy groceries at odd hours when I knew the store would be empty. I spent my days sitting on my couch in my pajamas, staring at my laptop screen, scrolling through job postings that all seemed to require qualifications I didn't have, or confidence I'd completely lost. Every time my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca or my mom, my stomach would tighten because I knew it would either be another joke about my situation or more unsolicited advice about what I should have done differently. The silence in my apartment became deafening, and I found myself talking to my cat, Whiskers, like he was my therapist because he was literally the only one who didn't judge me or make me feel worse about myself. If you've ever felt so alone that even breathing felt like too much effort, please subscribe and hit that like button because this journey gets darker before the light breaks through. Have you ever isolated yourself because facing the world felt impossible? Share your story in the comments so we can support each other. I remember one particular night, about 3 weeks after the firing, when I hit my absolute lowest point. I was lying in bed at 2 a.m, unable to sleep, and I started thinking about all the dreams I'd had when I first moved to the city. The confident woman who was going to climb the corporate ladder, buy her own house, travel the world, and prove to everyone that she'd made it. Now I was 32, unemployed, being mocked by my own family, and feeling like every decision I'd ever made was wrong. I grabbed my journal from my nightstand and wrote the words, "Who am I without my job?" at the top of the page. And as I stared at that question, I realized I genuinely didn't know the answer. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing a complete stranger staring back at me, and that terrifying realization was what finally broke through my fog of depression and forced me to make a choice. Something shifted inside me that night when I wrote that question in my journal. I sat up in bed, turned on my lamp, and started writing down everything I was feeling. The anger at Mr. Carter for firing me, the betrayal by Rebecca and my mom, the disappointment in myself for building my entire identity around a job that saw me as replaceable. As I filled page after page with my raw emotions, I suddenly remembered something my grandmother used to tell me before she passed away. "Amelia, you're never truly defeated until you stop fighting, and even then, you can choose to fight again." Those words hit me differently in that moment because I realized I'd been letting other people's opinions and judgments define my worth, and I was done giving them that power. Make sure you're subscribed and have hit that like button because this is where my story takes a dramatic turn that nobody saw coming, especially not the people who laughed at me. Have you ever had a moment where you just decided enough is enough? Tell me about it in the comments. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. I took a long shower, put on real clothes instead of pajamas, and stood in front of my bathroom mirror and said out loud, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." It sounds cheesy when I say it now, but in that moment, those words felt like a promise I was making to myself, a commitment that I was going to use this painful experience as fuel instead of letting it destroy me. I made a decision right there that I wasn't going to beg for my old life back or try to find another job that would just see me as another replaceable employee. Instead, I was going to completely reinvent myself and build something that nobody could ever take away from me. And the first step was figuring out what I was truly passionate about beyond just earning a paycheck. But turning that decision into action was going to be harder than I ever imagined. I spent the next few days doing something I'd never done before. I sat down and really thought about what made me happy, not what looked good on a resume or impressed other people. I realized that during my 4 years at Henderson Marketing Group, the moments I enjoyed most weren't the corporate presentations or client meetings, but the creative brainstorming sessions where I got to design campaigns from scratch and tell stories that connected with people. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down every skill I had, every passion I'd ignored because it didn't fit into my corporate life, and every dream I'd buried because it seemed too risky or impractical. By the end of that exercise, I had pages filled with ideas, but I also had a terrifying realization. I had no money saved up. Rent was due in 3 weeks, and starting over meant I'd have to learn entirely new skills while figuring out how to survive financially. If you're watching this and feeling inspired to make a change in your own life, hit that subscribe button and smash that like button, because the next part of my journey will show you exactly how I turned nothing into something. Have you ever had to start completely from scratch? Drop a comment and tell me about your experience, because I'd love to hear how you pushed through. The first real step I took was enrolling in free online courses about digital marketing, graphic design, and social media management, areas I'd touched on at my old job but never fully developed because Mr. Carter always assigned those tasks to other departments. I woke up every morning at 6, made myself coffee, and spent 8 hours a day learning, practicing, and building a portfolio of work, even though I had no clients yet. My sister Rebecca called one afternoon and asked what I was doing with my time, and when I told her I was teaching myself new skills to start freelancing, she literally said, "Amelia, you're 32, not 22. Nobody's going to hire a beginner at your age." Those words stung like hell, but instead of letting them defeat me, I used them as motivation to prove her wrong. Every night I fell into bed exhausted, my eyes burning from staring at my laptop screen, but I also felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years because I was building something that was mine. The hardest part of starting over wasn't the long hours of learning or even the financial stress. It was the constant voice in my head telling me I was making a huge mistake. Every time I sat down to work on my portfolio or reach out to potential clients, I'd hear my mother's voice saying, "You should have worked harder," or Marcus telling me, "Some people aren't built for high-pressure environments." I started second-guessing every decision, wondering if Rebecca was right and I was too old to be starting from scratch, questioning whether anyone would take me seriously as a freelancer when I'd just been fired from my corporate job. There were mornings when I'd wake up and feel paralyzed by fear, unable to even open my laptop because the possibility of failure felt so overwhelming that staying in bed seemed safer than trying. Subscribe and like this video if you've ever battled that inner voice that tells you you're not good enough, because I'm about to show you how I silenced it and kept moving forward. What's the worst thing your inner critic has ever told you? Share it in the comments so we can all support each other in shutting down those negative voices. I remember one particularly brutal day about 6 weeks into my journey when I applied to 20 different freelance projects on various platforms and got rejected from every single one. I sat at my kitchen table with my head in my hands, tears streaming down my face, thinking maybe everyone was right, and I was just fooling myself. My bank account was down to $300, I'd eaten ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights in a row, and I had serious doubts about whether I could actually make this work. But then I thought about that moment in my bedroom when I'd promised myself I would become something more than what happened to me. And I realized that giving up now would mean letting Mr. Carter, Rebecca, my mom, and everyone who doubted me win. So I wiped my tears, opened my laptop again, and instead of applying to more projects, I decided to create something that would make it impossible for people to ignore my talent. What I did next changed everything, and it's something anyone watching this can do too. I decided to stop waiting for clients to find me, and instead create something so impressive that they couldn't ignore me. I spent 3 entire days designing a complete social media marketing campaign for a fictional coffee shop, including graphics, captions, posting schedules, and even mock engagement analytics showing potential growth. I made everything look professional and polished. Then I posted it on LinkedIn with a simple caption, "This is what I can do for your business. Who wants to be next?" Within 24 hours, my post had gotten over 500 views, 30 comments, and most importantly, 3 direct messages from small business owners asking about my rates. My hands were literally shaking when I read those messages, because for the first time since losing my job, someone actually wanted what I had to offer. If this story is giving you hope that your breakthrough is coming too, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, because you need to see what happens when opportunity finally knocks. Have you ever created your own opportunity instead of waiting for one? Tell me in the comments how you made your own luck. 2 days later, I had my first official client, a woman named Patricia Chen, who owned a small bakery and needed help with her social media presence. She offered me $400 for a month of content creation, and even though it wasn't much money, I felt like I'd won the lottery because someone was actually paying me for my skills and creativity. I stayed up until 3 in the morning working on her content, making sure every post was perfect, every caption was engaging, and every image was beautiful, because I knew this was my chance to prove that I could deliver results. When Patricia's Instagram followers grew by 30% in just 2 weeks, and her bakery saw an increase in weekend customers, she sent me a text saying, "Amelia, you're a genius. I'm telling all my business owner friends about you." That message made me cry happy tears because it meant I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was actually building something real. But the best part was still coming, and it involved the people who'd laughed at me. About 4 months into my freelancing journey, I was managing 8 regular clients, making more money than I ever did at Henderson Marketing Group, and actually enjoying my work for the first time in years. I was working from my apartment, setting my own schedule, choosing projects I was passionate about, and building a reputation as someone who delivered real results for small businesses. One afternoon, my mom called and asked if I'd found a real job yet, and when I told her I was freelancing and doing really well, there was this long silence on the phone before she said, "Well, I suppose that's nice, dear." That lukewarm response should have bothered me, but honestly, I didn't need her validation anymore because I'd found something much more valuable: belief in myself. Make sure you're subscribed because the next part of this story shows how success speaks louder than words ever could. Have you ever proven someone wrong just by succeeding quietly? Share your victory in the comments below. The real turning point came when I ran into my sister Rebecca at a family birthday party for our cousin. She immediately asked what I was doing for work, clearly expecting me to say I was still unemployed or working some minimum wage job. When I told her I was running my own digital marketing business with multiple clients and making good money, her face went through about 5 different expressions before she finally said, "Wait, you're serious?" Then she started asking me all these questions about how I did it, how I found clients, and whether I could teach her because she was tired of her boring office job. The same person who'd laughed at me and said I wasn't cut out for the corporate world now wanted my advice. I was polite and answered her questions, but inside I was thinking about how 4 months ago she'd made me feel worthless. And now she was looking at me like I had something she wanted. Even Marcus, my former best friend, reached out via text saying he'd heard I was doing well and wanted to catch up, probably because he needed something from me. The validation felt good, but what felt even better was knowing I didn't need any of them to believe in me anymore, because I'd already proven everything to the only person who mattered: myself. 6 months into running my own business, I realized something profound. The real transformation wasn't just about the money I was making or the clients I was landing, it was about the person I was becoming. I started noticing small changes in how I carried myself. I walked with my shoulders back instead of hunched over. I spoke with confidence when meeting new clients instead of apologizing for taking up space. And most importantly, I stopped caring about what Rebecca or my mom or anyone else thought about my choices. The woman who used to cry herself to sleep worrying about other people's opinions had been replaced by someone who knew her worth and refused to settle for less. I began investing in myself in ways I never had before, buying books about entrepreneurship, attending online networking events, and surrounding myself with other freelancers who understood the journey I was on, instead of people who tried to tear me down. If you're on your own journey of self-discovery and want to see how far personal growth can take you, hit that subscribe button and like this video because what comes next will blow your mind. Have you ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized the stronger person staring back at you? Share your transformation moment in the comments. The old Amelia would have never had the courage to raise her rates or turn down clients whose values didn't align with hers, but the new version of me did both without hesitation. When a potential client tried to lowball me at $50 for a week's worth of content, I politely declined and recommended someone else, because I finally understood that my time and skills had value. I started setting boundaries with my family too. When Rebecca made a snide comment about my work during Thanksgiving dinner, I calmly said, "I'm really happy with what I'm building, and I'd appreciate your support instead of your criticism." The table went silent and my mom looked shocked, but I didn't back down because I'd learned that protecting my peace was more important than keeping everyone else comfortable. This internal evolution was changing everything about my external reality, and the best part was that it attracted even better opportunities into my life. You won't believe what opportunity came knocking next. Looking back on my journey from that devastating Tuesday when Mr. Carter fired me to where I am now, I've learned that true self-sufficiency isn't just about making your own money, it's about trusting yourself completely. For years, I'd relied on external validation to feel worthy, my job title to prove I was successful, my family's approval to know I was on the right path, and other people's opinions to define my value. When all of that was stripped away in one cruel moment, I was forced to find something deeper, a belief in myself that didn't depend on anyone else's stamp of approval. I had to learn to be my own cheerleader, my own motivator, and my own source of confidence. And that process was painful but absolutely necessary. It's like learning to swim by being thrown into the deep end, terrifying at first, but you discover muscles you didn't know you had. Make sure you're subscribed and have liked this video because the conclusion of my story is going to tie everything together in a way that might just change your life. Have you ever discovered a strength you didn't know existed until you had no other choice? Tell me about it in the comments because your story matters. Self-sufficiency taught me that I don't need permission to chase my dreams. I don't need anyone's belief to make things happen, and I definitely don't need to shrink myself to make others comfortable with my success. Every morning when I wake up now, I get to choose my schedule, my clients, my projects, and most importantly, I get to choose how I show up in the world. The freedom that comes from building something entirely on your own terms is unlike anything I experienced in my corporate job, where I was just a replaceable piece in someone else's machine. Yes, it's scary to be responsible for your own success and your own failures, but it's also incredibly empowering because you realize that you're capable of so much more than you ever imagined. The woman who lost her job and got laughed at by her own family is the same woman who built a thriving business from nothing. And if I can do it, so can you. 1 year after losing my job at Henderson Marketing Group, I reached a milestone I never thought possible. I'd grown my freelance business to 15 regular clients and was making triple what Mr. Carter used to pay me. But the real victory came when I received a LinkedIn message from none other than Richard Carter himself, asking if I'd be interested in freelancing for Henderson Marketing Group, because they'd heard great things about my work. I literally had to read that message 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, and then I sat back in my chair and laughed until tears ran down my face. The same man who'd fired me without an ounce of compassion, who'd had security escort me out like a criminal, was now asking me to work for him, and he had no idea how poetic that moment felt. If you want to see more stories about how karma works in mysterious ways, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash that like button right now. Have you ever had someone who wronged you come back asking for help? Drop your story in the comments because I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this sweet irony. I took my time responding to Mr. Carter's message, letting him wait a full week before I politely declined his offer, and explained that my schedule was completely booked with clients who valued my work from day one. I kept it professional and classy because I'd learned that success is the best revenge, and I didn't need to be petty when my thriving business spoke for itself. That same month, I was invited to speak at a local entrepreneurship event about building a business from scratch, and when I walked on that stage and saw 200 people looking up at me with interest and respect, I felt like I'd finally arrived. My family was in the audience too. Rebecca, my mom, even Tommy, and after my talk, my mother came up to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Amelia, I'm so proud of you, and I'm sorry I didn't believe in you when you needed me to." That apology meant something, but what meant more was knowing I'd succeeded without needing their belief in the first place. Looking at where I am today compared to that broken woman sitting in Mr. Carter's office being told she was being let go, I can honestly say that losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover who I really was beneath all the titles, opinions, and expectations that I'd been carrying around like heavy baggage. I learned that the people who laugh at you when you're down aren't the ones who deserve a front row seat when you rise back up. And that's perfectly okay because your journey isn't about proving anything to them. It's about proving everything to yourself. The pain of betrayal and mockery that once felt like it would destroy me actually became the fuel that powered my transformation. And now I wake up every single morning grateful for that terrible Tuesday that changed my entire life. This is your moment to make a choice. Are you going to let other people's doubt define your future, or are you going to use it as motivation to build something amazing? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'll be sharing more stories about overcoming obstacles and creating the life you deserve. What's one dream you've been afraid to chase because someone told you it was impossible? Share it in the comments and let's build a community of people who refuse to give up. If you're going through something similar right now, whether you've lost a job, been betrayed by people you trusted, or feel like you're starting from zero, I want you to know that your story isn't over yet. This painful chapter might feel like the end, but it's actually just the beginning of something better if you're willing to fight for it. The mockery, the doubt, the loneliness, all of it is temporary, but the strength you build while pushing through is permanent. So take that first step. Even if your hands are shaking and your heart is scared, because 6 months from now, you'll look back and thank yourself for not giving up. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, they might have laughed when you fell, but they'll be speechless when you rise. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss that next video dropping soon. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about standing up for themselves and setting boundaries, please share this video with them because you might just change their life. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you deserve to be treated with love and respect by everyone in your life, including your family. I'll see you in the next video.